Beaming out across the galaxy, this is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Free Zone with your host, Freeland.
Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. It is wonderful to have you here. This may be the last show until Christmas. We'll have to see what happens, but, you know, scheduling people around Christmas time gets a little hairy. So just letting you all know, there might be a little bit of a Christmas break, but I promise you I will be bringing you all kinds of great reruns that have to do with everything that we've been covering. Now, we've been getting deep into the beast system, as it's known, and this idea of a total planetary lockdown coming onto planet Earth. And as we are witnessing, like we're in some bad science fiction movie trying to scream to people like the invasion of the body snatchers, saying, they're already here. It's already here, you guys. You don't realize. And people are looking at us like you're drunk and you're crazy. But right now, on the cover of Forbes magazine, I find that we are about to be introduced to the disruption machine. Now, I found that a very catchy title for this story on Forbes because it's actually around a story about augmented reality glasses. So there is a company now called Magic Leap, and this secretive $4.5 billion startup aims to obliterate every television, phone, and computer on the planet. Now, how does it think it's going to do this? Well, Magic Leap and HoloLens from Microsoft are planning on giving you augmented reality through glasses that use a photonic light field chip. And this is much like your cathode ray tube on your television, except that it takes photons that scan across this light field chip and bounce off of nanoscaled structures that reflect light and draw a picture directly onto your retina. Now, what this means is that we're moving into the era of Iron Man, to the moment where you can just open your display in front of you wherever you're at. You can have a humanoid-looking augmented reality person come in and give you the knowledge that you seek and go and share it with whoever else is in the office. You could have octopuses and octopi, would that be? And X-Wings flying around your office while you're working, and everything would look exactly real. These people were able to then take these glasses and put a pixel anywhere in space. And once they did this, they knew they had the technology solid. They are now able to project, say, a television screen in the middle of your room, floating. You can walk around it, look at it, change the channel. Augmented reality is becoming a reality next year. And to look at this planetary lockdown and all the integrated systems that are going to go into this really strange future we have, folks, is none other than Elana Freeland, who you have enjoyed on the show before, and Billy Hayes, who we will know as the Harp Man, or we might call him the Microwaved Man. He is an MK Ultra survivor, but because of his subcontract agreements with HARP, he is not under non-disclosure agreements. So he actually has a security that will allow him to speak with us. So we are so lucky. Elana is well known for her book, Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. You can pick this up at Amazon. I highly recommend it. You want to get this data, this details, so that when you're pointing out those chemtrails in the sky, you actually have some science behind it to tell you. And let me tell you, Elana has the science. So Elana, Free, and Billy, please, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you also.
Yes, I am very interested about our show, because this is going to go places that, well, you guys have not had the opportunity to go. And it's going to show the world this dangerous, dangerous topic. I want to first state how brave both of you are for coming out with this very national security, secret, and very dangerous topic.
Well, I would say that Billy in particular is in sometimes grave danger. And I appreciate everything he has given me as guidance while I wend my way through not just radio shows, but the most recent book that I just finished and is with my publisher on the space fence. Billy was invaluable. In fact, I'm going to give him credit or blame him for 2 years of work on the space fence because he was adamant that this had to come out for the public to know about.
Yes, and thank you, Billy, because that's the truth. You began as a contractor at HARP, starting to get into the understanding of the levels of technology that this thing could accomplish. I remember back in the day, now this was just a real moment of revealing for me, and anyone wants to go look it up, they can look it up in the Anchorage Daily News, that when they were testing HARP as a missile defensive shield, a meteor came into the atmosphere and seemed to strike right over the HARP antenna array. And then there was a sonic boom, and 3 hours later, an earthquake. The Anchorage Daily News reported it was the end of the world, that all the Denzians of Anchorage were running for their basements. People thought it was over. They had never suffered an earthquake like this ever. And that was my introduction to HARP. And my first idea was, oh, my God, can we hurl meteors at the planet? And then the second thought was, wait a minute, if we have a missile deflection shield, does this not break all the mutual destruction treaties that we have with the rest of the world? So, Billy, do you want to pick up on any of that?
Well, actually, that was the first HARP you're talking about, HARP with Gerald Bull. And that sequence just wasn't expected. That was not part of the SDI program.
Do you remember what year that was, Billy?
1964.
Does that sound right to you, Freeman?
No, what I'm talking about happened in the 90s, and it was just as HARP had begun. Let me see if I can find the news story on that, but feel free to discuss how HARP has this type of capabilities and anything that you wanted to say on the early renditions of HARP's beginnings.
Yeah, on the Gerald Bull. Go ahead, Billy.
Okay, well, in 1964, Gerald Bull was doing testing of the supergun out on the Aleutians, and the idea was to launch an atomic detonated load into the atmosphere and ring the magnetosphere. At the same time that out in the Atlantic and out in the Pacific, they were also doing ringings at the same exact time, trying to coordinate a ringing around the Earth of a specific portion of the magnetic flux field. And during that occasion, there was so much electronics built up along the Aleutian Islands, which my father was in charge of at that time, that when the detonation happened, it wiped out all their own equipment, but the antenna systems that they were using repeated the EMP that came off that detonation. And during that EMP that came off that detonation, within 20 minutes, an earthquake hit Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, the strongest earthquake ever recorded in the United States. And, of course, it's back before it was the United States. But it initiated just a bewilderment of Tulines. It was so strong that the tsunami that repeated itself 4 times along the Aleutian Islands wiped out every bit of equipment that was there. Just wiped it off. They didn't have a chance to even go out and clean up their own mess. It just wiped. There was 25 military personnel that were lost along the Aleutian Islands that day from those tests that were there for those tests. My dad just happened to be on one of the higher mountains and survived.
So that was Gerald Bull's his gun, wasn't it? Now they have that
right
up and running.
That was the super gun. I was supposed to go meet with Gerald Bull, and my wife talked me out of meeting him in Amsterdam to talk about setting up communication and data links for his experiments and project in Iraq for Saddam Hussein.
Wow.
And I'm glad I didn't go because he was assassinated in Amsterdam by the Israeli, I call them the Israeli crew.
Gerald Bull was.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. He was assassinated.
They
And
bombed
that's
up.
the Aleutian Islands. And today they're making they're building a huge space fence facility in the Kwajalein Islands, island in the Marshall Islands. I mean, that's how far we've come. It goes way back that they've been working on the space age, basically, Freeman. It's all about getting ready for the space age that we've already entered.
Right. So about 1958, we had our first ICBM tests, and we were launching rockets. Another decade later, we were then launching people into space. And another decade after that, my dad built the first color television in Orlando and the first computer from Heathkit. And we were trying to move into that Jetson space age as he hid that massive cathode ray tube in a big hole in the wall going outside to make it look like a flat screen TV. But, when I think back to the fact that, I was around for the first color television and I'm not old, and how much now we're talking about augmented reality, this is just leaps and bounds that we are going. So let's try to understand this space fence a little bit first so that we can get a clearer picture of what we're talking about when we say space fence.
Well, let me start. I want to that picture you have of the retinal display, basically in your living room. That's a good picture because since the I guess I have to go back to when Eastland. Bernard Eastland's patent, the 1987 patent that I deconstruct in Chapter 2 of of my Chemtrails HARP and the Full Spectrum Dominance book. He refers again and again to conductivity and certainly cyclotron resonance, and these two things are on my mind a lot, even with the Space Fence book, because we started out by with HARP being the grand experiment instrument, experimenting with the ionosphere, drawing energy, ballooning out the ionosphere, heating it up so much that it ballooned out, and then our atmosphere being sucked up into it, and then it coming back down through the magnetic lines of force down into the lower atmosphere so that this atmosphere would become like an antenna, like a battery, electrified. And that had to be done with many, many nanoparticulates of conductive metal, as we know, aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, etc. So now we're living in an atmosphere. And that would be since, I would put it at the late 90s, the time you're talking about, Freeman. We're living in an ionized atmosphere. The late 90s is when Clifford Carnicom, independent scientist in New Mexico, began collecting data with very primitive means that was dropping from the sky because at that time New Mexico was being heavy hit by chemical trails. And it was all really new and hardly everybody thought it was contrails. Everybody thought it was just water vapor. Now we're moving into yet another phase of the delivery system, in my opinion, where the chemical trails are still happening. I watched them lay a big one near me, in front of me here where I sit at my computer this morning. But there are also other delivery systems going on up there. And I can't help but feel that this ionized atmosphere, which is we're breathing in, so whatever they're dropping, whether it's from the combustion chamber of the jets, through the pyrolysis process that these chemicals undergo to become chemical compounds like aluminum oxide, that this, or if it's actually additional pylons on the wings that they're dropping various chemicals over certain regions for other experimental purposes, the truth is that we're breathing it in because everything is dropping on us. And so when you talk about the picture of the living room glasses that people can now create their own blue beam holograms in their house, in their living room, I don't think that would be possible without the atmosphere being absolutely battery ready. It's primarily because of all the wireless operations that the military-industrial intelligence complex wants to perform here in the lower atmosphere, so that they can have what I called full spectrum dominance, and that's lifted straight from the doctrine of full spectrum dominance, an overarching doctrine of the U.S. military. I don't think that you could possibly have such a fancy little item in your living room unless you had all the nanoparticulates and everything just charged to the gills. And in your house, of course, you have the addition of the 60 hertz wiring all around you. So you're in like an anti-Faraday cage. I mean, that's what I think. Billy, what do you think?
I'm in total agreement. And you just brought up a real heavy point, is the house wiring in your house acts as an elaborate antenna system through the all the way back to the substation. All these substations are separated by wavelengths of the HARP system, and those frequencies are resonant to the pulses, not the frequency, but to the pulses that were used by the HARP technology. And one of the associated problems with that is it's straight wiring, so it's not able to dissipate the pulses as they come in. Anybody having Romax should understand, if they twist that Romax 2 times per foot, it will reject most of the EMP and the HARP technology type signals from entering the house or being fed through the house.
Huh.
Now, tell me, Billy, all the 60 hertz are AC. What if they were DC? What does the AC do with the pulsing that's coming in, and what would DC do that was different?
Well, the AC gives a rise in the perspective of looking at the signal. So if you take a HARP signal or a space fence signal and launch it at the same time as that rise, and it coincides with any one of the sub-harmonic frequencies of 60 cycles, when it reaches a peak and you launch that, it gives a tremendous hump to the occasion of recepting that pulse.
All right. That one, I'm going to have to let that sink in a little bit. I'm getting what you're saying, though, in the idea that, well, no, I'm not.
No, do you see how the chamber that is your house becomes something that can be pulsed? And now these pulses, they're coming from all sorts of devices, yes, but they're also coming from being humped from towers, NexRads, various, whether it's a Gwen tower or a cell tower. I mean, we are in the middle of a resonant chamber. Right. And by having the 60 hertz around your house in a room, you are really in a deeper resonant chamber. So now, what can happen to you in there? Well, you can be targeted. You can have, a blue beam hologram in your home. But all of this goes back to the experiments with HARP, in my mind, and how we now have made our lower atmosphere into something like the upper atmosphere. And we can actually keep it going down here without dipping into the ionosphere as much as we did when we had HAARP going.
I had many instances when I lived in Austin, Texas, where I felt I was being microwaved from the inside out.
Yeah. You were in a chamber.
Yeah. An apartment complex, a full chamber. It's a very, very weird thing that we're in right now that, well, basically we're looking at a force that has the power of God. To say that, I mean that they're invisible. And we could talk about earthquakes, we could talk about EMPs, even fireballs, or even just weird frequency mind control, and no one would ever know who did it. You know, if they were using these, so say there was Sura, the ionospheric heater in Russia, and HAARP, the ionospheric heater in America, and who knows who pushed Katrina which way, or if they were battling over it, you know?
Oh, did you see that when it first happened? Did you see the two fiery, I think it was on some Doppler satellite feed, two different forces down by the mouth to the Mississippi battling back and forth? Did you see that, Freeman?
Yeah,
I did.
Yes.
I saw it. And then it was gone from the web.
Right.
Absolutely gone right after that.
And that's what we're
I
here
see
for.
what you mean.
Yeah, and that seems to be the biggest problem is anything that came out that was visually active and factual, it disappeared within a day or two of the media picking up on it or anybody saying anything about all the YouTubes that had the factual images disappeared.
Yes.
Within 24 hours.
Right, and that was 2005. So you can imagine now they've got it all sealed up. They know, different feeds from NASA are now bogus. I certainly don't trust NASA feed. And other things are being bent and twisted to support the secret that is still this technology. It is amazing that you can keep a secret this long, but when I think of other military secrets, it doesn't seem so strange to me.
Yeah. I mean, even when word got out about HAARP, it was just played down. It's just a research facility in Gakona, Alaska, trying to understand the ionosphere. What are you worried about?
And I had an experience in that. I had just read in 1997. I had just read Nick Begich's book and Gene Manning, "Angels Don't Play This Harp," and I had taken the book along with me to a substitute teacher job. And was sitting in lunch in the faculty room, and two male teachers sat down to have their lunch, and a little mousy woman was to my left who never raised her eyes from her sandwich. And they asked me about the book, and I told them the little bit I knew. And then the next day, I had a military chopper over my house for 5 minutes, I guess, putting me on XY coordinates. And then from then on, my phone had this weird click thing. So I found out pretty early that it was a dangerous subject in the 90s. I really don't feel that now, at least for someone like me, where I don't have a PhD in plasma physics. I think that I do know a couple of physicists who are now interested in this and what's really going on, and who are falling out of the conditioning that they went through in grad school, who are appear to be being targeted by electromagnetic weapons. I think it's, as I like to say, I think it's probably not a good idea to have a PhD in physics at this point. To me, Billy has been really valuable because he had the hands-on experience from the very beginning of this technology, and that's really it helps to give me ballast because I'm good on big picture and I'm good on research. But Billy gives me those pictures from what he and his body actually experienced.
Billy, tell us a little bit about the sounding rockets, thermite, and how this is related.
Every launch we have of rocketry, including the shuttles, has always been assisted with solid boost rockets. These solid boost rockets are a combination of chemicals that make up super nanothermite, which is burns so fast that the explosion that comes off from it is used as thrust for these rockets. This nanothermite contains all the contents that are being utilized in the chemtrails. The plume that's left behind the rocket as it leaves the Earth's atmosphere maintains a burn while it's going into space. That burn leaves these particulates of the same thing that's in chemtrails in outer space during the launch, up to a specific altitude that when it burns off, the boosters are released. They fall back into the atmosphere or fall out near space back into the atmosphere. This propellant falls behind the shuttle and gets sucked into space. And the sounding rockets that are launched at Wallops and Canaveral and Vandenberg all maintain the same content in these sounding rockets. They launch to do, they call it a visual effect of the ionosphere and the illumination of aurora borealis effects.
And that's why people are seeing the aurora all the way down to Texas.
Absolutely. They're contaminating the near space areas with these rockets. The plumes, all these rockets. This stuff eventually works centrifugal force with the Earth moving. As long as this stuff is in orbit, it will centrifugally mend itself back to the equator lateral position of the Earth, making a positive ring around the Earth.
Well, and that's the part of the space fence that's in near Earth orbit.
Let me add a little bit to that before we go to that. I just want to add a couple of stories so that people know that you're right up there with this. There was an event that occurred not long ago. It was called the Cloud of Care, and I covered this. You could watch the launch live on my website from the Wallops Flight Facility, and it was called the Cloud of Care. And CARE stood for the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment. Now, the open reason for launching, now what this was a rocket that launched up into the upper atmosphere at about 180 miles and released a cloud of aluminum oxide. And they said that this was to test for noctilucent clouds. And they released this thing, and like I say, you could watch the launch live on my website, but when it hit the news, and I have the news on my website as well, they were saying, oh my God, aliens have opened a portal in space. And the news said, we have no idea what this is. There's an opening in the sky, and then it went away, and it was the craziest thing. And they were going, the newscasters and everybody. You could watch the launch live from my website. I know what it was. It was the Cloud of Care. So here is a prime example of a charged aerosol release experiment open to the public, but not to the news, of releasing aluminum oxide clouds. Another one that was very much the same story was when an ICBM was launched over President Barack Obama as he was receiving his Nobel Peace Prize in Norway. This, of course, was known as the Norway Spiral. Now, again, the news announced aliens greet Barack Obama for his Nobel Peace Prize. But what happened was there was a Russian submarine in the White Sea right there. They launched an ICBM. Nobody seemed to care that Russia launched an ICBM over the president receiving his Nobel Peace Prize. But then this rocket was spewing, like the Cloud of Care, out of the side of the rocket, making it spiral in space. And then that happened to occur directly above the ionospheric heater known as ISCAT. And it seemed as if ISCAT was pulsing this aluminum oxide cloud. Now, aluminum oxide, folks, is the base element of sapphires. We're talking about gem and minerals in space. So we're going to get into this as we start to talk about this cloud forming out there. But there are two public examples for you that you can go look for yourself. Aluminum oxide cloud in the Norway Spiral and the cloud of care. Open science right there.
Well, that was really good. I didn't know that about the Nobel Prize and the Norway Spiral.
Too much. You can't write this stuff. So, Billy, we got this stuff going out there. It's in all kinds of gem minerals and nanoparticles. What's this all about?
It's a fact that they're trying to devise a communication data system that will be around the Earth in such a way that no matter where you go, this ring, which will be eventually like the rings around Saturn, will be able to respond to any frequency that is in that bandwidth or the resonant length of those rings. Therefore, if they're pulsing 6 pulses per second, there is a portion of that ring that will be resonant to 6 pulses per second.
Down here.
Down on the Earth.
Yeah.
And outer space. So any type of communication that was digitized, that was pulsing at the same rate on the frequencies that they want to utilize will be reflected on that ring and act as number one, as a translator. Being able to, like a repeater, be able to receive it and repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same token, everything within this ring is of the same content that is utilized in DVDs and CDs.
Right.
As it spins around the Earth, in the Earth's orbit, at a speed that's reasonable, that a laser, a small point of a laser, can make contact with that ring. It can either record information being sent on up to it, or read that information that is within that cloud.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now you got a recording system that is essentially beyond infinity. I mean, it just goes on and on as they eventually add on to this so-called spinning cloud. It will be infinite of the information that they can cram into it.
Wow.
Now, Billy, let's go from the pulsing that is going on in the cloud that is the CD around the Earth to the instruments that are placed on the Earth, and that space between the two, from the near-Earth orbit down to the Earth. What will that pulsing do down here, and what does it mean for us?
What it means is anything that is digitally enhanced will be able to be monitored, recorded, and saved to look at in the future. That includes your license tag, your driver's license, your credit card, your bio, anything, your phone calls. All this information can be collected and monitored.
Everything you give up when you walk into Walt Disney World.
Absolutely. Now they're trying to devise frequencies into the tera wavelength, which would include your DNA.
Wow.
And your thoughts.
Right. Yes. We're getting to that point right now with CRISPR technology. China has announced that they're going to produce the first genetically modified human. We're getting deeper. I don't want to get there yet. Now, just so the public understands this as well, folks, just so you can see how far this stuff can go. The ISCAT ionospheric heater in Norway, in Svalbard, was used to send a Doritos commercial to Ursa Major. All right? Distant star, folks. And the strangest thing for me, guys, Billy and Elana, this one just takes the cake. The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves, a movie that says humans are so horrific and warlike that you better send a giant nano robot here to destroy us if we can't prove that we're not warlike cretins. All right, the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves. They used the deep space guide wave to send this movie to Alpha Centauri. Now, you can look this up. I'll put it in my Twitter feed, folks, if you want to see it. And I'll put the HAARP meteor in my Twitter feed as well. But you can see this for yourself. We sent The Day the Earth Stood Still. Now, the day that it ended up at Alpha Centauri, telling all of the people there that we are horrible warlike beings and should be destroyed, was December 21st, 2012. That was the day it actually arrived at Alpha Centauri, because it took 4 years for it to get there. So this is the type of capabilities that these pulse arrays have to be able to send Doritos commercials to distant stars.
So, all right. So, Billy, let's go somewhere that you normally don't go. How would you see the rings around Saturn and how they formed? If our space fence ring is looking more and more like one of those rings, how did those rings form around Saturn? How would that have happened?
There would have had to been an asteroid or something hit the planet that would have had to send debris up out of the methane. You have to remember the majority of Saturn's lower atmosphere is methane, frozen methane. But underneath that, which is where we cannot see, are elements that we know of, which would have been possibly aluminum oxide. And it would have thrown all this debris out around the whole complex of Saturn. And the centrifugal force of Saturn's spin eventually centrifuges this to the center of that spin. And therefore you have the rings.
So it would make sense that we're developing a space fence ring for space communications with our devices that are in space. I mean, I believe we have one right now on Saturn's moon Titan. Then that would be the primary goal in space for that ring.
Right. Here's what one of the projects that Bernard Eastlund was participating in was ringing the rings of Saturn with HAARP. Intentionally trying to bring it. And when they did bring it, all of a sudden they had a hexagon that showed up on the polar region, the North Polar region of Saturn.
Right.
And it's been there ever since. Fluctuating and in and out, but it did something to the magnetosphere of Saturn.
Okay.
And that's why I'm bringing up these open articles that you folks can go check out for yourselves. So you know this is not just an ionospheric heater. It does go to distant stars. It does go to distant planets. And it could absolutely be ringing the rings of Saturn without a doubt. Now, we had a lacrosse mission. NASA launched a rocket, a kinetic weapon, straight into the moon. Now, there was really no purpose for this as far as the public examples were coming. They said that they crashed this rocket into the moon to discover water, but India had already discovered water on the moon just months before. But what I believe is, and I wanted to get into tomography and some of these ideas of how this is all just really sinking into everything, but when you strike something like the moon with a rocket, with a kinetic weapon, and then you can pulse HAARP at that moon and see inside of it, just like you saw in Jurassic Park where they hit the ground and they could see the dinosaur. It's very much the same thing, and that was my belief for the lacrosse mission, why they crashed a rocket into the moon, and HAARP confirmed that they had performed tomography on the moon. Do you have any ideas on that?
You hit it right on the button. The impact of this single component, kinetic energy component hitting the moon created a sounding that vibrated the whole moon. It didn't just pump a little thump right there where they hit. It actually shook the whole moon in such a way that any signal coming to it would have been reflected as an echo. This was the reason that they were utilizing HAARP to do it. It devised a way to do interplanetary sounding. The experiment on the moon was just the beginning. You notice now we keep on sending things out and hitting all these other planets. The intentional bumping of impacting other planets in order to what? See what it's made of. See where these areas of high mineral and chemical compounds are that they want to eventually maybe mine, for instance, on the moon. I mean, the idea of having helium on the moon is major. Helium-4 is mandatory that, whoever gets there first gets to mine it first. Well, Chinese are getting ready to do that.
Yeah, no one's expecting China, right? They don't see that coming. No one thinks about the fact that Kazakhstan is the major launch pad for the world. NASA's fallen way behind. We've got SpaceX rockets exploding on the tarmac. But Kazakhstan, the Russia-China alliance, they've already got their first military space station going up. They've got China is way ahead in this space race.
Well, you think so?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, maybe not way ahead, but much farther than I thought China would be. Is I guess what I meant. Way ahead for China.
Well, that's what the War in Space thing, CNN thing said, wasn't it, Billy? That Russia and China were way ahead.
Right. That's basically what they said, but they didn't really say it that way. It's what CNN presented is what's happened in the past and not in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All these things that they were contemplating have just recently lost their their security. They're no longer classified material.
Right.
Mm.
They were able to actually go into places that have been normally in the past classified. Buckley Airfield, Driver Air Force Base, the Control Center for Space Surveillance Systems. Just recently, over the last year, they're kind of dumping those old systems, and that's where this new space fence falls into the new space surveillance system, which is not just surveilling space; it's surveilling from space back to Earth.
And this is so beyond satellites. This is
so beyond. I mean, this is the beginning of total human dominance.
The planetary lockdown.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's important to remember that the space fence was up and running under the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, back in the Reagan era. And right before, actually, too. But that what they were lacking, and this is my opinion, what they were lacking was what HAARP has given us, which is this sort of ionizing of the lower atmosphere. They really needed that in order to produce not just a space shield, but a space CD and the lockdown on all of the instruments down here that are calibrated to operate with the space fence. That's a real key point, and Billy knows a lot about that.
Yeah, we're talking about smart meters, monitoring smart meters, being able to transfer information from everything on this earth that it has a digital recognition. That means your TV, your computer, your cell phone, your smart meter, going to the cash register, anything that has a GPS lock on it. And the only way to get out from underneath the control of this would be at this moment in time, knock out the GPS system. which is what this so-called space war is all about. Because technically speaking, you could not have a war today without GPS. You have no way to see where these locations are accurately. You're back looking at a map.
Right. Yeah, boy, I remember the day. Well, let's take that to the ultimate level and analyze a little bit of this in the ideas of mind control, because we're getting to the end of this first hour, and I'm thinking of something you discussed before, as the troops in Iraq just suddenly gave up. That was the weirdest moment.
Well, that was the voice of God weapon, and I mean, I think everybody knows about it now, but at that time it was very, very unknown, and it did seem mystical. It's how I think of people now who jump to the ET conclusion with no research, no really looking into the facts of the matter, and completely underestimating human cunning and capability. That voice of Allah, they called it then, but that now is known as, I think I would call it synthetic telepathy, and what's the other term? There's another
neurophone.
Beyond the neurophone.
Beyond that.
This is V2K, voice to skull.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two terms that it's known for, and that too depends on pulsing. That too. Everything has to do with resonance, Freeman. Everything. And that's why ionizing the atmosphere really eases these technologies into place.
You've seen this same system utilized in crowd controls. It's called LADAR.
Right.
That's just a simplified, low-powered portion of it. In Iraq, they went out and had these, in advance of us going in, they had these half-tracks running around out in the desert with these dishes on them that nobody understood what they were, you know?
Right.
Right.
And this was LiDAR. They were pumping out hundreds of thousands of watts per unit by putting in a amplifier that just plugged into the system. Normally it's only 1,000 watts. You plug in this PA into it, and all of a sudden you got 100,000 watts.
And as I recall, they took over the FM stations too and put subliminals under the religious music and the speeches.
Correct. And this LiDAR would intermix with the FM. So not only were you getting voice communications, you were also getting subtones off of this LiDAR all over. Within 500 miles, anywhere they lit up these LiDARs, it would reflect off from the local atmosphere and interject into the transmitters of these FMs. Now, not AM, it wouldn't work, but with FM stations and TV stations, it would integrate within that signal.
Which brings us back to your initial comment, Freeman, on this new device being put out. I think, did you say it was Microsoft or no, it was Google? This device, I would be very cautious with it as to what sort of subliminal capabilities it has being piped into it, under it. Oh, yeah, I'd be really.
And it was called Magic Leap.
And,
it will be coming out. And we're going to get into a little bit of magic, folks, in the next hour in the members section. Because a magician, the only ever academically accredited magician, designed HAARP as a psychic machine years before it was ever built in Alaska. And I'm going to cover that with you. And I'm one of the rare people who actually had this magician on my show. He has died since, so I am pretty much your only interview that you'll ever get from the only academically accredited magician. He designed and created a degree in magic at Berkeley and passed it. And on the weirder note, guys, Billy and Elana, I want to ask you if this is just a random thing. Maybe you thought about it, maybe you haven't, but John Kerry and Buzz Aldrin in Antarctica.
Bingo.
Come on. What is going on? Now, Buzz Aldrin, he's running around saying there's showing the monolith on Phobos. He established the Freemasonic Lodge, Tranquility Lodge on the moon. John Kerry is Skull and Bones. His secret name is supposedly Long Devil. Don't know if that's true or not. But here we got John Kerry, Secretary of State, Buzz Aldrin, man to land on the moon. And they are having some serious difficulties in Antarctica. And what do you guys think?
Well, go ahead, Billy. You can start.
I got my opinions out of it.
That's all I'm asking for.
This is not fact. This is my opinion. There is something been going on down in the Arctic ever since the Nazis were there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I believe this is all part of it. There are signals that I've been monitored for years and years and years. I put up 28 stations around all the way into Australia, Ascension Island. All these stations were put up there to monitor nothing more than what's going on in Antarctica. There are stations, Russian and Japan and China, England, the British got their own stations all over the Antarctic. Why? Because they're watching something. They know something's there.
Right. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Right.
What about you, Elana?
Part of it, Billy, is Operation Deep Freeze, which you clued me into, and I wrote about in the Space Fence book, and how what I've been really thinking a lot about, because I'm friends with a woman named Rose in New Zealand, and New Zealand is where is the port of call for the ships going to and from Antarctica. And as Billy told me months ago, many of those barges that are going there were loaded with radio equipment. So we know it's electromagnetic. We know whatever's going on and being built or conducted there is electromagnetic. The recent earthquake in New Zealand, not that far from Christchurch, one more time, it seemed to me that Kerry was in town 1 or 2 days before that. He was in New Zealand, and he met with John Key. Now John Key, who was the prime minister, has resigned. So, if you follow the breadcrumb trail of these events, we had an 8-point earthquake in our Antarctica last February, and now there are all sorts of ring of fire things. The most recent being the Indonesian one just yesterday. I think that they're what did Nick Begich call it? They're tweaking the dragon's tail. They're ringing the bell of the electromagnetic Earth, and I don't know exactly why. For Buzz Aldrin, I have to say that I consider all the astronauts to be programmed in order to do what they have done and in order to carry the secrets they have carried. So I don't know about that, but I see it all as one huge drama having to do with the earthquakes around the Ring of Fire as well.
Well, here's another thing that talking about astronauts. All these astronauts that have been in space have undergone heavy concentrations of RF and magnetic field penetration.
Yes.
They have been through equal to what I've been through.
Yeah.
With working on live HARP systems and associated high-powered transmitter systems. I mean, I was basically cooked. And these astronauts have all gone through these magnetic fields the same as I had. And when they step into a radiated field like this, they have always gotten sick. You look at every one of them that was hospitalized. Something was going on, electromagnetic combinations of what was going on in the magnetosphere, the same time that they became very ill.
Right.
There you go.
This is what happened to Buzz as soon as he stepped up to 10,000 feet. They gave the excuse he was running out of air, but that isn't what happened to him. The gentleman was having seizures, just like I do when I get into an RF effect of certain pulses.
And that's really what's happening to all of us right now. We are under this frequency attack. We can't trust our own emotions. We have all of these chemicals and particulates going into our lungs. We're laden with heavy metals. We're feeling sick, run down, and, along with all the media mind control, then we have all the frequency mind control coming in on us. And let's try to end this on some sort of high note of really trying. Well, there is no high note, folks. There really isn't.
No, I have something positive to contribute. I say it every radio interview I possibly can because I deal with really heavy stuff and I have to sift through it and make it mine and see how it fits into the big picture of the time we've been born into. I feel it's a great opportunity living now. Yes, it has danger. Every time has danger. That's nothing new. But today we're going from one era of humanity and nature to another era of humanity and nature. And there are some pivotal things that must be done in order to make sure that humanity is going to make it through this eye of the needle that we're faced with now, given the technocracy that we live in. And that is, to me, two things. Make your immune system strong. And if that means changing your lifestyle, changing all those McDonald's burgers and eating GMOs because it's cheap. If that means changing those things, change it. Because you have got to keep your immune system strong. I have a very strong immune system because I've been eating basically macrobiotically for 35 some years. And I constantly, I'll have a treat and then I'll compensate for it by eating well the next day. So I am on it because I want to not be a broken down old lady and I want to see this through of what I've begun. So I highly recommend that. The second thing is consciousness. You don't know, and I don't know, what consciousness can really do if we really take hold of it and not just do it as a little lifestyle thing when we're not watching TV or not out doing something fun. Consciousness is every day, every minute, how you bring to bear your consciousness on what lies before you in life, just regular life, nothing terrifically dramatic, but that includes now when you go on Facebook, when you have phone conversations, when you meet people, when you're writing things, you must realize that your consciousness is our ace in the hole as a people. I am not concerned about the elites as long as many of us, I know I can't ask for everyone, but many of us are laying hold of this ace in the deck of consciousness. We don't know what will happen as we push on that in order to retain a humanity that we will recognize as human in the future. That's kind of my desideratum. That's what I go with. And what drives me to write the books I do, give the talks, etc.
Very well stated. And that is the truth, folks. Our consciousness is the one thing that we're all out here trying to save. The true purpose of everything that Elana does, that Billy does, that I do, is to fill in the gaps, give you the full picture, to understand the full spectrum dominance, to relieve the fear so that you can act in a conscious way. Because once you start to take all of this information in, and it's heavy, and then you start to look out on your world again, it makes it very difficult to just go back to the old rut of going to work and just having your beers and eating your McDonald's. You just can't do it anymore. And that is the consciousness shift necessary when we simply just can't do this anymore. Oh, they make it look all bright and shiny, and they're going to give you augmented reality with HoloLens and Magic Leap, and you're going to think, oh, this is the world. But realize that we are controlled by psychopathic elites that really want to dominate life and are on the precipice of immortality. And this is something that we're going to get into in the second hour. We're going to get deeper into transhumanism, how all of this is invading your body, and looking at the true puzzle that is life on planet Earth, including the ideas of magic and the occult that I'm going to throw into this puzzle, much to Billy Hayes' dismay. I'm still going to do it. He is an academically accredited magician, so I think it's worth noting, because it's an amazing thing that you're going to learn in the other hour. So if you haven't subscribed yet, get over to freemantv.com and hit subscribe. There are many, many ways to sign up, and you will not regret one of them. Those of you, and I should put this at the beginning of the show, if you have subscribed and have not filled out, created your own profile there on freemantv.com, please do so that I can activate it and you can get access to the members section. It's super simple, folks. Just go over to freemantv.com, hit subscribe, and it supports all these efforts. It gets Elana Freeland out into the world so that more and more people can hear her, and it just really, it's a good thing to do. So come on over to freemantv.com and subscribe. If you want to get Elana Freeland's book, it is available on Amazon. It is Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. Just search Elana Freeland. Of course, it'll be linked right here on freemantv.com. Billy Hayes, he doesn't have a website. He is here truly just dedicated from a heart, soul, purpose. He has nothing to sell you. He just really, really needs you to understand the danger that you're in, and has put his life on the line and even his health on the line to bring this information out to you. And I want to thank you, Billy, so much for your honor and your courage. And I don't know if you're still there right now, but we will pick you back up on the other side. If you're not, if you are, chime in. Okay, I thought he was off. So fantastic. We'll take this on over to the other side. So members, we'll join you in the members section. The rest of you, we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in every week, and I hope you're loving every bit of it, and that we are changing consciousness on planet Earth.